Hello, everyone. Welcome to LOA Uncorked. This is Holly.
And this is Gina.
And Gina, we've waited this week.
Friday, and it's the best Friday, honestly, of the last year, year and a half, at least.
Since we met him, and it's a him today, since we met him, we haven't been able to stop talking about him. Okay, not only... We're going to give a little hint here. Not only is his podcast amazing and inspirational, but he himself is amazing and inspirational.
Absolutely.
And we are so excited today. And we've been talking about him to our PR agent, Nina. And Nina had to just reach out and have coffee with him. She's like, I got to find out who this
man is.
Quote unquote.
Yes.
Paul Padmore is in the house today. He is the founder and the host of My Perfect Failure. I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and to think about a failure as perfect is just, I want
to sing.
I know.
Okay.
Let me fail more today.
Okay. And so I love
a lovely
that.
opera you got there.
I know.
That was nice.
That was
Paul
only with one cup of coffee in the morning.
That's
this
impressive.
is so good. So we're going to talk to him about, it was after losing his job at a tech startup. He felt like he failed.
Yeah.
And felt compelled to understand how to turn failure into success.
Yeah.
And so with that, he has birthed the most amazing podcast with the most incredible guest lineup. And Gina and I, we're going to be on there too.
We stuck in there somehow.
I don't know.
I mean, everybody must have been busy.
We strong-armed him. And
Everybody else was busy one week.
Yes.
And we got snuck in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And he talks with business leaders, entrepreneurs. He works with them. He consistently demonstrates how we turn failure into success. I love this so much. Welcome to the show, Paul Padmore.
Woo!
Yay!
Wow. What an honor to be on your podcast. And I've been looking forward to this all week.
So have we.
You know, like when you've got like this thing that just keeps you happy on an even keel all week. And it was you guys coming on your podcast. So thank you so much. And I love the energy between you, the energy, chemistry. This needs to be on, I don't know what your networks are in the States, CBS or whatever it is. This needs to be on prime time.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Well, listen.
Well, you know, we said the same thing about your energy and being on your podcast, which we will put that in the show notes for sure.
We have decided we want to start, Paul, on the intercom in the tube, as you suggested last time. We really want to be in the London rail system. We want to welcome everybody in the morning. That's really, let's start there. That's true, superstar status for sure.
Honestly.
And then NBC later. Yeah.
That would be good.
And I really, truly love how you hold space for your guests. I don't know if you do that on purpose, that you know you're doing it, how you hold space for all of your guests and ask the most thoughtful, thought-provoking questions and just allow them to reveal all their gifts. I mean, it's pretty impressive. So I'm a little obsessed with it for sure.
Yeah, the vulnerability you allow folks to have and share, because that is how we all learn. Is hearing all those stories, right, from people that we would never know had a perfect failure, and that's what we all need to be reminded of. Is those failures are a beautiful opportunity. And by design for sure. So Paul, we typically start our podcast with an opportunity for you to share a bit about yourself with our audience, and an opportunity to kind of, we think helps ground the conversation as we continue to talk with you, to give a little bit of history about yourself, who you are, what you're all about, what's important to you, what kind of brought you, kind of the milestones of Paul that brought you to where you're at today, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. So I'm smiling because I'm on your podcast. So thank you. You've got such wonderful guests, and I love listening to your episodes and stuff. So it's an honor to be here. so everybody listening can probably glean from my accent. I'm from the UK. I was born in London, but I was raised just outside of London in a place called Basingstoke. And I want to say Basingstoke because not everybody knows about Basingstoke. But so it's a lovely town, about 40 miles from London, and it's got a lovely community. And I was very fortunate to be raised here with my family. I've got a lovely, not a massive family, but we are sort of a close knit family, and very fortunate to be raised with my mum, my nieces who are kind of like sisters to me. There are three of them. They all look like they're different ages, but they're like twins. Their aunt and their uncle who were like, surrogate parents to me as well. So I was very lucky that I had a very loving, close-knit family, still do, and I've got the most amazing friends. So I've always had amazing friends around me. And it's funny because recently we've been, obviously COVID is, it's kind of like lessened now. So we can go out and do a few more things. So we've been doing that. And it's just reminded me when we're together, we're still like we're at school. We still laugh at the same things that we found funny 30 odd years ago. So it's lovely to have that lovely kind of like close-knit community, not just family but friends. And so I've done all the usual stuff, school, college, university, studied in London, wonderful time in London. Then it was time to get a job. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, I guess, from a career perspective, and I ended up going into sales, which I kind of, it wasn't sort of a natural thing for me, but it was one of those things that you could learn. You kind of like work with, good people, and you kind of get the hang of it. So I did that, enjoyed that, and I did that in Basingstoke. So I moved back from London to Basingstoke. So I think I stayed in London, in Basingstoke, probably for about 10, maybe about 8 years. And then I decided to go back to London to work. So did a couple of jobs again in sales. Then I got the opportunity to go into digital advertising. So essentially what I was doing, I was working with an amazing team of people. So this amazing team of people are now firm friends. So very lucky. So what we were doing essentially was monetizing our digital real estate. Not like when you go on newspaper sites and you see rich media ads. Yeah. We would negotiate with tech companies about how we could monetize our digital inventory or digital real estate. So learned a lot along the way, had lots of fun, challenging moments, and stressful months. We're trying to hit target, and you've got pressure here and there. But it was, really, I can only think about fun that I had.
I love that.
Then,
I love it.
Yeah, so it was fun. I've got such amazing friends that have come out of that experience. And then I got an opportunity. So basically, a funny story was, so I left the company to go and work for another company, which I did for about 5 years. And the company that I was working for got acquired by the company that I used to work for.
Oh.
So I ended up. Are you guys familiar with Canary Wharf? Have you heard of Canary Wharf?
No.
Okay. So Canary Wharf is like our financial district in London.
Okay.
And it's kind of like out on its own in a sort of on a little sort of island. So it's kind of like a little bit of a mission to get there. And so when I left Canary Wharf, I was like, I'm not going back to Canary Wharf anytime soon. And then about 5 years later,
oh no,
the company that I worked for acquired the company that I was working for. So actually, I was going back to Canary Wharf.
You did go back to Canary Wharf.
So it was a bit of deja vu.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked in digital advertising, and then I got the opportunity to go and work for a startup, which was quite exciting. Came out although I knew the people that were setting up the
Right.
startup, I I wasn't kind of aware that they were doing it, and they basically just earmarked me for to have quite a pivotal role within that startup.
Yeah.
And
Right.
there was probably about 8 or 9 of us in the startup, and all of
Okay.
us knew one another. I'm not sure that we'd all work with each other at the same company, but
Okay.
we'd all worked with each other at different intervals at different companies. So it was
Right.
almost like a little family. So my role was to look after partnerships and growth. So
Mm-hmm.
it was to leverage the partnerships, relationships that I've built over the years,
Right.
help monetize our offering to our customers. And just a bit that I haven't mentioned. So when I initially was in digital advertising, I was on the publisher side.
Okay.
When I went to the startup, I sort of it was a sort of a 360 shift in that I was still in the same space, but I was in the tech side. We had tech solution, or we had a tech offering.
Right.
Got it.
And so we had wonderful, lofty ambitions and excitement about we were going to make a splash, we were going
Oh
to
yeah.
we
Oh
were
yeah.
going to just
Sure.
bring something to the market that was needed, and we were going to just really bring value. That was the ambition, that was the idea, that was the conversation that we all had, and we had lunches and whatnot just about how we were going to do it, this, that, and the other. And so we had the first month when okay, it was like, and it kind of like really reaffirmed what we were doing, and I guess validated it. And then after maybe about the third month, things were getting a little bit more realistic about this wasn't going to be easy. It was going to be
Right.
more of a challenge than we anticipated. So maybe a little bit of naivety, but I don't know. But anyway, um, so after probably about 6, 7 months, like in this space, you can really, because ultimately it's about revenue, it's
Oh
about
yeah.
Oh yeah.
solution, but ultimately you can check revenue
Quick
every day.
growth. Yep.
Every
Yep.
day, every day, I can look in dashboards, see what the revenue is looking like. Either and you can say you can tell, in real time what's going on. So after about 6, 7 months, things were like not looking that great, and we were having internally, we were having difficult
Mm.
conversations about you know what do we need to do, why aren't we connecting with the market, and you know it became a situation that really never fixed itself. And
Right.
after about 10 months, I got made redundant, which was which was a hammer blow, because it's a hammer blow, I guess, for a number of reasons. A hammer blow because you feel that you failed. It's a hammer
Mm.
blow, I guess, because you feel a little bit embarrassed that you've made this announcement that I'm leaving this sort of steady
Right.
corporate role that I had,
Right.
because I worked in a Canary Wharf and it was a steady gig, but not I wasn't really inspired by it at all. So it was the right thing to move at the time.
Right.
But you have all these emotions going on. So while in the lead up for maybe 7 months or 10 months, I realised that things weren't going according to plan. And at that time, I started to think about failure.
Mm.
This is all around about 2017, by the way, just to give you
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
a timestamp. And I started thinking about how people process failure. How do people come back from failure? I
Mm.
really wanted to inspire myself to come out of this sort of slump in this situation. So I started thinking about people like J.K. Rowling. She
Mm.
got turned down by 12 authors. Michael Jordan talks about missing 9,000 shots, but he had to do that to be successful.
Right.
Thomas Edison 1,000 times before he invented the light bulb, and all these, it goes on and on. There's lots of people, noted people that we're aware of, that really failure for them, it was an opportunity. And I think at that time I was really clutching for straws.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, made redundant, had to, walk out, just you walk out, you walk into the building 10 foot tall, you walk like an ant.
Yep.
And
Yep.
um, I was very lucky actually because I got another job quite quickly. So I got another job maybe a couple of months later. But for about a year, I could be at dinner, I could be, on the tube, I could be having breakfast. I was just walking down the street, and I would just think about how does, how does the everyday person process failure? Because I hadn't processed it. I was still processing disappointment, and I compared me and others to maybe people, the noted people that we hear about, and then I wondered, like, what have they got that I don't have? Because clearly everybody has access to it, we just don't know about it. About what we can do. And then I decided, because it's been in my head for about a year, I should do something with it. And I love listening to podcasts, you guys. so because you get inspired so much from listening to podcasts, so inspirational. And I decided, why don't I learn how to make a podcast? So I went on YouTube, and people leave such lovely, helpful notes about how you can make it. So that's kind of where I got going. And the idea of My Perfect Failure came about because I knew what I wanted to do, but I was messing about. I was writing down different names for podcasts and stuff, and they just didn't seem quite right. But I'd settled for, I can't remember what I'd settled for, but I settled for a name, but it didn't feel right. It's almost like, if you're wearing something that's a little bit ill-fitting, it doesn't feel quite right. You've got it on, you're going out to a function, and you can't really engage this function like you would do because the item doesn't really fit you quite right. And that's how the name that I had at the time felt. And I remember distinctly, I was in a WeWorks building in central London, and I was going to a meeting with my colleague at the time, and I remember he held the door open for me because he was before me, and the name just came to me, My Perfect Failure. It literally came to me, and I knew that was my name. And because it just, I like the idea that failure is actually, we get so much from it. We get information, we get opportunity, we develop our resilience, we just, it's an opportunity to reframe and to really push ourselves, regardless of who we are, what we do, what our background is, regardless of what we've experienced. We all can use it's just reframing the idea of failure and empowering the idea of failure. And then I'll just summarize. So then I decided I would do it, started connecting with a few of my, I didn't tell many people I was going to do it, because I felt that if I spoke to lots of people, because I've got no background in making a podcast, I think I told 3 people, and I think my brother was one, and Norfolk, who produces, who put the website together, another friend, Dan, who I worked with at the time, because I felt if I told everybody, people would be like, really? You're doing a podcast about failure? Really? I'm not, with people just give you that, either that look or that non sort of approval. I felt that probably would maybe not make me feel great about it, and potentially I wouldn't have done it, and you and I wouldn't be talking now. So I told 3 people, come up with the idea, websites, all that type of thing, and then I realized I had no guests to speak to. and then I reached out to a girl I still know, but a girl that she was really cool at connecting with people. So I told her, and she kind of said, look, I can get you some people. So she got me a few people, and then I realized that I can't short circuit the process. Part of the process is me connecting with people, me reaching out to people. I think in the early days, it's good to do that, because it helps you really connect with what you're doing, because you're going to have, email engagement, or phone calls, or I guess Zoom,
absolutely,
these sort of things. So that's what I did, And I had imposter syndrome around it at start, because you kind of think about, well, who's going to want to listen to Paul Padmore talk about failure? You know, why don't they can listen to Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins, you know, just any number of different people, you know. So I definitely had imposter syndrome about that. But as soon as people came back and said, yeah, we'd like to come on your podcast, we like the idea, and then at that point, you know, I had to deal with the imposter syndrome, and it's been fun. So it'll be 3 years this year, and it's been hugely fun. I've had the pleasure of having you guys on my podcast, and it's really, that's what it's about. It's about having amazing guests that can really help me from a selfish perspective, but also from a more important perspective. It's about providing those little seeds of advice, of encouragement, of hope, and just seeds of, you know, your reality. Everybody has a great reality, and having you guys, it means, on the podcast, and others, it means that people get access to people that can really give them access to their great, you know, their great life. It's a bit of a gateway. So that's kind of where it all started.
I love that. You know, I when we have a guest, I like to go back to your first podcast. So I did go back to your first podcast.
Yes, that was
really
I don't know whether I don't think you've had Jay-Z yet. Okay.
No.
But
we're going to keep working on it for you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So
well, you're in the right country.
Yes, we can. Yes.
We are.
We'll ring Beyonce and, you know, get her on it too
to twist
for you.
the arm.
Yeah.
You know, you've stayed true to your roots. I love that. I also love that. I mean, it's so fascinating because I've been in corporate business forever, and the fun and the startup and the allure of that, and the fact that you were comfortable and you took a huge risk. I mean, most startups fail.
Most
period.
of them do. Yes.
Okay, like that's a normal thing.
That is
it
very
would be
normal.
very abnormal if you would have succeeded.
Yes.
And so it's like you had the courage to actually make that leap from comfort, and I believe that. I mean, that's why I like My Perfect Failure so much. I love the title, and the title's epic. I love how you got the title.
Yeah.
But it's like if we are staying comfortable, then we aren't introducing
The
failure.
opportunity.
You know, and so.
Well, you know, we've all heard it, and when I look back on my life, I will say it has absolutely been true for me. Is you learn far more from your failures than you do your successes. Yeah. You know, and the successes are always. Basically on the back of failure, getting there, in one way or another. Maybe it's not, you know, losing a job necessarily, but it could be, you know, mistakes made, you know, relationships damaged or disappointed or gone. Whatever it is, there are failures along the way that in the long run, you know, often you look back and realize they were really truly gifts to create space for success, different success, right?
Yeah. There's a guy that was on my podcast called Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and he talks about gap in the game, and he's got a book out around that, which I haven't read, which I will at some point. But I think gap in the game is that when something negative happens to us, like a failure or a setback, invariably we think if we focus on the gap, and that's how our brains are wired to focus on the negative. But what he's, I guess, diving into is there's always a gain. Look for the gain, or look for something that's good that's coming out of that. So, you know, if we, like my first podcast, you know, it's challenging because I was, you know, tongue-tied and not that comfortable. So
we remember ours.
We do.
So, yes, we remember ours. Yeah,
absolutely. So the gap would be, you just focus on, I was lousy, I'm not going to be very good at this. The gain is actually, that's one more podcast done. It had a fabulous guest. There is some wonderful information there, and there's some point. And actually now I've got some areas for me to work on, which I didn't know about before. And the reason I mention that is because it's a good way, if we have that awareness, to think about any situation. There's always a game somewhere.
Absolutely.
I love that. And, I think, honestly, I love the imposter syndrome. You talked about that before on your first episode. And I can tell you in every job I've ever had, I was like, they're going to find me out.
You've had that, yeah.
I was a CFO and I'd be like, okay, I can't do math. Well, that's impossible. I can't do math. Okay. Right. But, and I'd be like, they're going to find me out. I've struggled with that. I think that we as humans struggle with that. And of course, when we did the podcast, it's all those things and more that, you meet with. And when you overcome it, it's just, it's so beautiful. So what are your tips to change that? If you are feeling imposter, if you are feeling like, okay, I'm not good enough or I failed, what advice would you give our listeners on how to turn that around and create epic success from that?
Right.
Yeah. So I guess there's a couple of things. I think visualization is a good one.
Huge. Yep.
To think about, think about how important it is for you to, whatever the goal is or whatever the ambition is, think about that, write it down, put some post-its on, think about, this is going to be me in 5 years, we're going to have, I'm going to, have my own company, or I'm going to be, CFO in my business or CMO or whatever it is. And visualize that, spend a bit of time in the morning, bit of time in the evening visualizing it, maybe write it down, journal around it, and really, and talk yourself up as well. Talk yourself up. We talk a lot on the podcast around self-talk. Sometimes we don't always have our peers around us, so when we have those moments of doubt, go for a walk. Don't stay at your desk or in four walls in an environment where we're just manifesting negative thoughts. If you have to go for a walk for 5 minutes, definitely, or 10 minutes, however long it is, definitely do that and really talk yourself up, empower yourself, because I think we can do that. And also, I think it's important to surround yourself with good people. If there are people that are in the same space as you that have similar ambitions, really connect with people that give you the right type of vibrations. Because if you don't, I think, and I'm not saying to disconnect with, family and friends at all, but I'm saying that, that concentrated time where you really want to empower yourself, make sure you're connecting with the right people, whether it be family or friends, give you the right type of energy.
Yeah, for sure. What has been, you've talked to so many people on this topic. I'm just kind of curious, what has been the biggest surprise to you or learning to you about kind of what has a theme that you might have heard from everyone about failure that maybe you didn't expect, or that you found it surprising, or maybe, a big learning opportunity for you about how these disparate people with very different stories. Is there a theme that you found that you can share with the audience? I'm just sort of curious.
Yeah, well, I guess the thing that resonates with me is you're saying that, the thing that I have in my head is resilience. I think that regardless of, I think we find out how resilient we are when we're up against it, and very often we don't really tap into our resilience, particularly if we're living a safe life where we're just doing we're doing that kind of life that's mapped out for us all. Because most of us, we go to school and we go to college, which is totally fine, and in many ways we should do that. But I think sometimes, it's very easy to live a life that kind of we never feel quite that it's actually the life that we want. And in order for us to kind of go out of that and really lead into what we want to do, that feels uncomfortable, and there's going to be rightly some challenges, but I think those challenges are good because it really helps us crystallize where we want to go with this. And in those moments, I think that's when we have to tap into our resilience and think, yeah, I definitely want to do this, but it's tough. I'm going to have to I'm going to find more out about myself. And just to answer your question, I think everybody, bar none, that and you guys included, that's been on the podcast, just I'm always in awe about how resilient you guys are. So resilient for me.
Yeah. I love that.
I know. I was going to ask about. I'm obsessed with resilience because, and it's great that you said that because I was like, okay, and none of us are. I don't think you're a psychologist either, but I was I don't think that you're born necessarily with resilience. You have to cultivate it. And when you talked about, your upbringing that was close and helpful, it's like but you've had guests from all different backgrounds. Okay. And so have we. And it's like, so, is this something that you have to get from your family? Do you know, like, how do we cultivate and grow resilience? Right. I'm fascinated by that. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, I think that, so I work with psychologists, so I should know a little bit more about this than I perhaps do. But I think resilience, I think we've all got it, which is a plus. I think we have to, I think the awareness for me, the important part is a lot of it we have to do ourselves. So we have to have some courage and some belief. And I think it's really important to, once we work out what we want and what's important to us in life, I think it's important to really surround ourselves with the right people that really can help with that growth. And it doesn't have to be, sometimes it's not always accessible that you're going to have people that are physically with us. So it could be listening to your podcast. It could be speaking, having lunch with somebody at work that gives you the right type of energy. But I think resilience is always there. But I think that we only really find, if we want to be resilient, I think it's a good sign, because I think it means that we have to chase our dreams. And if we're not, if somebody's listened to this and maybe doesn't really think they are resilient, maybe they can think about, are you doing what you want to do? Are you living the life that you want to live? And if there is a gap there, then maybe that's where you'll find your resilience. Right. Because if you go for it, you're going to have to lean into that, and you're going to become stronger. You might have a few, wobbly moments, but actually that's fine, because it means that you're on a journey to doing something that you want to do, and it's going to be important to you.
Yeah, I think about this with, our kids. We're talking about your upbringing. I know mine, and I think, this day and age, us parents have really worked hard to help our kids not have to fail very often. And I think, the early failures are the easiest to recover from. The failures later in life have a lot more weight to them, typically. And so, learning that resilience early. And also, I think, for me, I've learned a lot about resilience by just watching other people demonstrate it. And, I think as long as we're always inquisitive about that process. And so I think, your title and the focus of your podcast is really important, because it's so easy to only focus on the good stuff. I mean, in this society where we only put the best pictures on the Instagram, and we don't really want to ever talk about the bad stuff or the hard stuff. This is a really important reminder of, these things do come in life, and you have to be ready for them, and you have to be prepared. And sometimes just watching somebody else go through it and acknowledging what, I've got a dear friend going through a really tough time right now, and a change in her marriage and all that stuff, and watching her walk through that, it has just been a masterful demonstration of resilience. Just get up and go again, another day. And it, eventually you get through it and past it, and you become a different person on the other side of it. There's no doubt. And so it's just been interesting to grow and learn through her, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Because people inspire us. Because it's like the people that I had on the podcast, some of the things that people have had to navigate through. And what was interesting to me as well is that most of the people that I connect to and talk to, the person they are now is someone that they never thought they could be.
Exactly.
And if it wasn't for those difficult moments, they never would even have dreamt of trying to be that person. And the person, and invariably the person they are today, they're really proud of that person, because the journey that they've been on, the value that they bring to their loved ones, to maybe they're doing something to support a community.
Right.
And so that, again, it really shows us that our potential, and it's really about that reframing of ourselves, of a situation. And and it's really, and I guess the thing that concerns me when I do the podcast is because I think there are people out there that don't listen to podcasts, that maybe don't have the right people around them, and they might be going through a difficult time at the moment because they just don't have the right people, and they may not have hope. And it's and they're no different to the people that I've had in the podcast. They, if they have the right people around them, and they happen to listen to your podcast, my podcast, or many others that are out there, or read a book, or or something, then that little seed might be the trigger that just sets them on their way. Because there are examples of people that are young, that have processed failure and come out the other end, but there are also examples of people that are more advanced in years, that have had maybe 30, 40 years of difficult times.
Right.
But then they've been able to, something's happened, and they've been able to really transform their lives. So it's there for us all.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. Like, if we have audience members that are in the gap and you're not living your life, I'm going to tell you from our perspective, and I know you share this with us, Paul, is, starting the podcast or starting anything, we had no idea what we were doing. And I know you shared that we and what happens is, if you have the resilience, the inner inspiration to actually take a half step, not even a full step, just an inch. What happens is people start helping, and somehow you go from, Gina and I hated our voices. We were like, okay, we can stand ourselves. Okay. For sure. And then what about the knows and the ums and the imperfectness of, and I feel like that's the self-talk. I always called it the little person on my shoulder that wants to like knock me around and keep me safe, apparently. But you, one step at a time, like, I can't start this new business, or I can't start. And I'll bet you, if we talk to you about every one of your guests, they started 1 inch at a time, just like we did and you did for our podcast. And so if you're in that gap, I think starting with that and doing the tools that you talked about, the visualization, the journaling, the being around people that support you is incredibly important. We can't.
Well, we started our podcast for a very similar reason. We really felt like we had, I feel just honored and blessed to have this relationship with Holly, And we heard from so many other people that knew us personally would just say, oh my God, you guys are so funny.
Yeah.
How special. What you have is special. That is not what that connection is. Very, very, most people don't have it in their life. You know, there is something here that is, I've got so many fabulous, but there's something just divinely appointed here. And so we thought, you know, knowing so many others don't have it and watching what it gave to other people, we're like, okay, well, if people want to listen and it helps and serves them, I know how important it's been for me, and it served me in my growth, and let's share that. And that was the only intent we had, honestly. And a little stretch for something more creative for two corporate gals that weren't getting that, right? Those are really the foundational elements. And you're right. Like, we would take a little step, and we didn't know what we were doing. We would make a little step, and we'd set back. And then, but we're still, even when you have some setbacks, if you look at the overall trajectory, you're still ahead from where you were in the beginning. And, you know, so it helps us realize, okay, just because we have a mistake doesn't mean we're already back to ground zero. We got to start again. You know, there's progress that has been made, and it's been, as hard as this has been, it has been the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my entire life. And it's taught me so much about myself. It's helped our relationship and friendship grow. It has challenged me. It has, made me happy and inspired in ways I haven't had ever in my life. And it's just been so incredibly hard and the best thing ever all at the same time. And I think when you take those big steps in life, that's what it is. And, you know, mistakes, it makes the mistakes a little easier because you're loving what you're doing when you make them, right?
Yeah.
No, How has that been for you? Yeah.
No, it's kind of like the same. And so everything you just said resonated with me, like hearing your voice. Wow, that is, I remember
it's so true, right?
Hearing my voice, that is so difficult. And
it so is.
The ums and the ahs. And also because I edit as well. And I never used to, but I do now, just because I wanted to learn. I won't do it forever, but I was just keen to learn how to edit. And, you know, you'll be talking, you're thinking, why didn't I ask that question? And why am I still talking? And you kind of like, it's like when I edit, if there was literally somebody, if somebody could be a fly on the wall and watch me edit, they'd probably take me to the funny farm because I'm just chastising myself because why am I doing it?
What was I thinking?
I'm just why am I still talking? Why don't I ask that question? I just totally missed that opportunity, and I should have. And and I definitely agree with what you guys are saying about one step at a time, because we're not going to be. So our podcasts are amazing. That's it. But you know, it takes time to grow, develop, and to learn. Our podcasts are the most important thing. They're important and they are relevant, and we have to keep on doing this because people need the energy that we're bringing is definitely needed. And just around the failing part, I think it's good because I think we improve what we're doing, we improve our product, we improve the experience for our listeners. Seth Godin talks about, you know, if I fell more than you, I win. And he's talking about that, you know, I'm getting more information. If we fell more than him, then we're getting more information, and he wouldn't, you know, he's not talking about, you know, fatal failures, but there are failures that we need to develop and learn and to grow.
Yeah.
And is that part of, you talk about a growth mindset, is that what we're talking about then? Is that, you know, to have a growth mindset, it's about failure. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I started the podcast, I don't think I even knew the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. And I definitely have, or definitely had at that time, a fixed mindset because you think that you have to do this. If this doesn't go according to plan, that's obviously means because it was meant to be. I'm not good at this. And also you have the same view in other people. You can't do that because you you've got no background in that, so you kind of group people into little boxes. And so I think a growth mindset is vital. I think it's important that we have that ability to think about, something doesn't go according to plan. Think, okay, that's fine. What's another way to do it? What have I learned about this situation?
Right.
And if we start thinking about that, then we invariably find a solution. And if we just have this narrow view on us, on a situation, on our suitability, then it's very difficult to grow. And I definitely recommend, as we've all alluded to, that we just connect ourselves with people that have a similar type of positive mindset. Because I think if we do that, and we're open to new experiences and to learn, I just think that compounds engagement, interaction is only going to serve us well.
Yeah,
I love that.
Do you, and this we've had this question often with regard to you've talked so much on this podcast, and we do as well on ours, around the community that supports and is part of your life, and how critical it is that those be people that lift up, support, have an ability or a skill set to really, be your mirror when you need it, and help you grow in life, and those trusted confidants, those most trusted confidants, and the importance of those. Do you have any advice for our listeners? Because we've heard this quite often. What if I don't have that core group? Have you found anything or heard anything along the way from people that you've interviewed? Because I think it's a tricky question, but I'm just curious, because you've talked so much about it, if that's something you have.
You have it, yeah.
Yeah, and you have it. If you have any thoughts on that for people who may have a group, but may want to either add or just feel like they need to up level that crowd that they run with. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, so I don't have. So I've got not boasting, but I've got a lot of friends, and I've got a lovely family. But definitely, even some of my close friends, if I ring them up and say, "Can I talk to you about failure?" I probably hear them put the, "Are you still there? You're not there."
So somehow it's not the most popular topic, maybe.
So like, it's Paul again. He just wants to talk about his podcast and failure. So I know that there's some people who I'm very close to that have, got no interest in, just because their life, they're in a different direction, and which is totally fine.
Yeah.
And so you work out, within your group or within your community, there's potentially one or two people that you can think, actually, that person might be someone that I could reach out to. Maybe you can.
It's a really good point.
A coffee, invite them for a coffee, or a Zoom call, something like this. Or if you don't have anybody that you think maybe can provide that level of support, or just the right energy, then I think they should be listening to your podcast. I think they should be listening. Honestly, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because you that is your starting point. Listen to your podcast weekly. Listen, because they don't just get you. They get an amazing guest. Your guests leave amazing little tidbits that they can take, and they can run with those, and it might lead them to reading a book or watching a YouTube video or just doing something.
Yeah,
a different community.
Yeah, and even you can reach out to people. Maybe reach out to people. Someone that you admire. Maybe just drop them an email. So I heard you, on a podcast, and I loved what you said, and it really resonated with me. And you never know what can come of situations, and have that growth mindset mentality. So if somebody doesn't come back to you, because I've reached out to people, and not everybody comes back, which is totally fine. So don't close the door on that.
Great
Leave the door
suggestion.
open.
Thank you for that point. Yeah.
And it might be just somebody else that you need to connect to. It might be that if you connect with them, the energy might not have been right anyway. So it's the universe saying to you that there's somebody else you need to connect with. So
perfect.
So I guess in summary, for me, you know, your community doesn't have to be someone that you have to physically to be with. Right. It can be a podcast. It can be a book. It can be people, but having that growth mindset means that it can be a number of different things.
Great.
I love that. And I do love, thank you for saying that. If you should reach out, and if you don't hear back, don't take it personal. Right. I love that you said that the energy just wasn't there. It's not about personal.
Very true.
Sometimes people are busy. You can't take it personal, and don't stop just because that, you know, because sometimes you take direction and it's inspired, you know, if you're going to do it, but it's not necessarily always meant to be. And so I love that. That's the best advice. Well, as we're wrapping up, because like we could talk like a gazillion hours with Paul.
Yes.
Is there?
We'll do that when we come to London.
Yes,
exactly. It's an in-person.
Or I come and see you guys.
Yeah, anytime.
I would love to do that. Maybe I'll come and see you first, because Jay-Z and Beyonce.
We'll have them over.
We'll set up a dinner for sure. Yeah.
It's so true. We'd love to have you. That's for sure. So is there anything else that you'd like to tell our audience about the failure being perfect? And then can you tell our audience where to find you? And we'll put everything in the show notes for everybody.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, I guess for me, it's kind of like, you know, every experience we have is an opportunity. And I think with failure, you know, it really is an opportunity. So so I was thinking about this morning, actually. So for me, the consequences of failure is information and opportunity for you. And it's really reframing it as new experience, new knowledge about a situation, about yourself that you didn't have before. And, you know, and if we all think about anybody that we admire, whether they be an actor, a singer, you know, a corporate business person, or a politician that we admire, or anybody that it is admire, if you literally do a deep dive on that individual who we admire, we will see that this person has come back and come back and come back. And you guys said earlier, you have to keep on getting up. And those people have kept on getting up. And it's probably because they've gone after what they want, and they've visualized it, they've journaled, they've done all the things that we've spoke about. And we all have access to that. So if we've got some level of ambition about what we want to do with life, in our life, then we can literally do exactly what they've done, which is get up, keep going, visualize about what we want, and it's all there for us.
I love it. We need to reframe it from I failed to here's my opportunity to build my resilience.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I think we should rebrand it to hell yes, failure.
Oh, God.
Yes,
how about that?
Yes.
Holly calls herself the queen of rebranding.
I want to rebrand
she just did it again.
So instead of saying, oh, we failed, we're like, yes,
I failed.
Woohoo!
See, that is it.
Pop the champagne.
Yeah.
It's the energy. It's the energy.
It is the energy.
It's energy. And just lastly, if you can find me at www.myperfectfailure.com, and if you look up My Perfect Failure, you'll find me on all the normal social media handles. So it's been an absolute honor and delight to do your podcast. So the only thing I want to do it is in person next time. So
for sure. Next
time. So I think everybody should go to My Perfect 100%. Failure, subscribe, write a review.
Yeah.
Paul has the most amazing guests. Paul is the most amazing guy.
He's got a fabulous library to go back to too and catch up.
Absolutely. Yeah. So go hit up all his podcasts and
it was
woohoo failure. Okay.
Best Friday of 2022.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
And it was with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. My
Fabulous.
weekend has got a lot to live up to.
Well, go beat it. I mean, we're beatable. Trust us. But I'm glad we set the bar high for you, and
That's
you are
right.
just you have done the same for us. So thank you, Paul, for your time,
It's an absolute delight.
generosity, and just delight.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.